If you're listening to this, please tell me I'm real. Please tell me this house isn't. 3 months ago, I got word that my uncle had passed away. We were never especially close, but he'd left me one of his houses in his will. It was a kind gesture, and I appreciated it. But honestly, I just wanted to sell the place. I'm a brand new dad with twin girls, and the last thing I needed was another property to worry about. To move things along faster, I decided to make the trip across the country and stay at the house until the sale went through. My job only really needs a laptop and a cell phone, so getting approval to work remotely wasn't a big deal. My wife couldn't come. Her job needed her there, so I went alone. At first, I treated it like a little getaway. I figured I'd be there a week, tops. But the process dragged on. My realtor was handling most of it. But a month later, I was still living there, me in a house that didn't quite feel right. It started small. I'd put something down, and it wouldn't be there when I came back. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. I'd lose track of time in ways that didn't make sense. Whole hours gone like they'd never existed. I blamed stress, loneliness. The house was dead quiet except for the rare times when the realtor stopped by with a few potential buyers. It was the kind of silence that makes you start hearing things that aren't there. Before I started thinking I was going crazy, the neighbor showed up with a dog. She was an older lady, the kind who always looks like she knows more than she's saying. She told me she'd been dog-sitting for my uncle while he was in the hospital, and figured now that I was living there, I should take the dog, Buster, a golden retriever, off her hands. At first, I thought she might have been confused. She talked like my uncle had died just last week, even though it had been months. Still, Buster won me over right away. He was this big, friendly, golden lump of comfort, and having him around made the place feel a little less empty. I even thought he'd be the perfect surprise for my girls when I got back home. I just hoped my wife wouldn't kill me for bringing a dog into the mix. But even Buster seemed to know something was off about the house. He settled in quickly enough, but he refused to go upstairs. Wouldn't even set a paw on the first step. I figured that was fine. Easier to keep track of him downstairs anyway. Then, one day, Buster vanished. I'm talking gone. 1 second, he was right behind me while I opened the treat jar, and the next, nothing. My eyes were off him for maybe 2 seconds tops. When I turned back, he was gone like he'd never been there at all. I tore through the house calling his name, checking every room. The kitchen opened into the living room, and beyond that were the master bedroom and the study. The other side of the kitchen led to a dining room that looped back into the entrance hall. From there, you could see the living room again, along with the staircase leading up to the second floor. Upstairs, the landing split in 2 directions. Going left took you to a guest room and a game room. Going right led to 2 more guest rooms and a bathroom at the end of the hall. I searched all of it, every closet, under every bed, nothing. Every door and window was closed and locked. Somehow, he must have gotten outside, though I had no clue how. I spent an hour combing the neighborhood, calling for him like an idiot in my pajamas. Just when I was about to give up and start making flyers, I opened the front door, and there he was. Buster came scrambling out from the kitchen, tail wagging like nothing had happened. I was so relieved I didn't even care that it made 0 sense. I let him sleep in my bed that night. Looking back, maybe that wasn't smart. But after everything, I just wanted to feel normal again. For a while I did. Work picked up, and I buried myself in it. Calls, meetings, spreadsheets. I was in the zone. I landed a few big contracts and knew I'd be up for a promotion when I got back home. Time started slipping away again, but this time I didn't care. I told myself it was because I was focused, productive. Even Buster's whining for food or bathroom breaks faded into the background noise of success. Eventually, I started setting alarms to remind myself to eat and feed him. But half the time I'd ignore them. I was working around the clock, running on caffeine and adrenaline. I was taking better care of Buster than I was of myself, which isn't saying much. Then, one night, everything changed. With a bang. Literally. I was finishing up a spreadsheet, Buster lying behind me, whining softly, when we both heard it. A door slamming upstairs. For the first time since I brought him home, Buster bolted up the stairs on his own. That alone was enough to make my skin crawl. My first instinct was to call the cops, but with the phone in my hand, I hesitated. It felt stupid. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was just the house settling, and if someone really was up there, surely Buster would be barking his head off by now. So I did what any idiot in a horror movie would do. I grabbed the closest thing to a weapon, a frying pan, and went up to check. The house was dark, but the moonlight from downstairs spilled just enough glow through the railing to see Buster standing in front of the open bathroom door. I could have sworn I'd closed every door up there the last time I checked for him, but this one was now wide open. I flipped the hallway light switch, but nothing happened. Figures. My luck had been circling the drain for weeks. With no better plan, I raised my frying pan like some kind of makeshift weapon and crept toward the bathroom. There wasn't a window in there, which meant it was pitch black, pure, suffocating darkness. I was terrified, though I kept telling myself not to be. Buster wasn't moving either. He stood stiff as a board, tail rigid, staring straight into that open doorway. Not a bark, not even a growl. I tried to take it as a good sign. If he wasn't panicking, maybe there was nothing to panic about. That's what finally got me to cross the threshold. My eyes had started to adjust, enough to make out vague shapes in the dark. The bathroom was small, way too small for anyone to hide without me noticing. I started to relax a little, right up until I stepped forward and felt something wet and sticky under my shoe. That's when it hit me. I still had my phone in my pocket. I fished it out with shaking hands and switched on the flashlight. The weak glow swept across the floor and landed on the dark liquid at my feet. Bright red. Blood. I dropped my phone instantly, the light clattering across the tiles, and bolted downstairs. Buster followed without hesitation, claws skidding across the hardwood. This time, I didn't hesitate to call the cops. Luckily, a patrol car had been nearby, and 2 officers showed up within minutes. Their heavy flashlights cut through the dark like blades. They went upstairs while I waited at the bottom of the staircase, gripping the frying pan like a kid holding a security blanket. After a few tense minutes, one of them called down that everything looked fine, except maybe my plumbing. According to them, what I'd seen wasn't blood at all, just rusty water from a broken pipe. They insisted I take a look myself, so I forced my legs to move and followed them back up. Sure enough, the puddle looked brown now, muddy even. The officer pointed out a drip from the ceiling and said the bang I'd heard was probably the pipe bursting. They both laughed at my expense, but at least they were nice about it. One of them even scribbled a plumber's number on a notepad for me before they left. Unfortunately, my phone hadn't survived its dip in the rusty water. I'd have to rely on the dusty old landline in the kitchen from now on. I locked up after the cops left and told myself I'd call that plumber first thing in the morning. But sleep was out of the question. My nerves were shot, so I went back to my laptop, telling myself I'd just finish a few work reports to settle down. By the time I looked up again, hours had passed, and Buster had made another mess in the living room. I was exhausted, burnt out, and strung thin. I yelled at him, said things I shouldn't have, did things I really shouldn't have. The guilt hit almost instantly, like a punch to the gut. The next morning, I knew something had to give. I called my supervisor and told them I was burned out, losing focus, and needed a break. To my surprise, they didn't hesitate. They gave me the rest of the week off, called it a mental health reset. Just like that, all my pending work vanished from my plate. With nothing left to distract me, I tried to make it up to Buster. We played fetch in the yard. I fed him too many treats. I talked to him more than I probably talked to any person those days. For a while, it felt almost normal again. Then I found the first message. I hadn't been upstairs since the night of the rusty water, but I finally decided I needed to check the pipes before calling a plumber. The minute I reached the landing, I froze. Scrawled across the wall in what looked a lot like dried blood were the words, "Losing your mind?" For a second, I actually thought I was. The letters were uneven, smear dripping at the edges. Someone had to have been in my house while I was sleeping. I don't like to admit what I did next, but let's just say bravery wasn't on the menu. I locked myself in my room with Buster until I could breathe again. When I finally made it back down to the kitchen, Buster leading the way, I grabbed the landline and called the police again. The same two officers showed up. Together, we went through every inch of that house. Every room, every closet, every window latch. Nothing. No forced entry, no broken locks, no footprints. Just that message on the wall. The cops didn't mock me this time. If anything, they looked uneasy. They admitted there'd been a few reports lately from other houses in the neighborhood, people claiming break-ins where nothing was stolen. They even offered to have a patrol car sit outside overnight. I took them up on it, but I still couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I decided I'd had enough of this place. I called the only person I knew in this state, an old college roommate who lived about half an hour away. I explained the situation, and without hesitation, he said he'd come get me and Buster. He told me he'd be there in a few hours, so I started packing. I didn't know how long I'd be gone, so I threw everything I'd brought with me into the suitcase. Clothes, laptop, dog toys, everything. A few hours later, the phone rang. It was him, saying he was out front. I hung up and went straight for the door, relieved at the thought of seeing a friendly face. But when I opened the door, the driveway was empty. No car, no friend, just the sound of crickets and the soft hum of the porch light. I called him back, confused, and he swore he was there. I could hear his car idling, his door opening, his footsteps crunching toward the porch. Then, faintly, through the receiver, I heard him knock, and an elderly woman's voice answering the door. My friend's voice came through the phone, tense but steady. He said he'd knocked on the door, asked for me by name. even mentioned my uncle. The woman who answered looked confused. She told him she'd lived there for over 20 years and had never heard of either of us. After apologizing, he left her porch, got back in his car, and asked if I'd heard all that. I told him I must have given him the wrong address. He read the numbers back to me, same ones I had written down, and swore he was parked right in front of the house. Something icy crawled through me. I told him to wait while I double-checked, then stepped outside. The air was cold, damp. I walked down the driveway and looked back toward the house. The numbers that should have been on the curb were gone. Same with the ones on the mailbox. Instead, written in smeared red letters on the concrete, were 3 words: losing your mind. I stood there for what felt like a full minute, my breath fogging in front of me. The urge to run, just take off down the street and never look back, was nearly overwhelming. But Buster was still inside. I couldn't leave him, so I forced myself to go back in. When I stepped into the bedroom again, my stomach dropped. My suitcase sat open on the bed, empty. Every single thing I'd packed was gone, somehow put back where it had originally been. Clothes folded neatly in drawers, toiletries lined up on the bathroom counter, like I'd never touched them. I didn't care how impossible it was. I just knew I needed to get out. I clipped the leash onto Buster's collar. He looked exhausted, coat dull, eyes cloudy. Poor guy. I promised him silently that we'd both get out of this and I'd make it up to him. I tried the front door first, pretending everything was fine, like maybe if I acted normal, the house would let me go. The knob turned freely, but the deadbolt wouldn't budge. I twisted it again, harder, but it wouldn't slide back. That's when the fear really started sinking its teeth in. Buster whined softly beside me, pressing against my leg. I knelt down to hug him, and as he licked my face, something clicked. Whoever, or whatever, was keeping me trapped here. It wasn't a person hiding in the walls. Whatever this was, it wasn't human. Still, I tried to play along. "Well, Buster," I said loudly, forcing a casual tone, "time for a little walk." The sliding glass door to the backyard opened effortlessly. Buster bounded out with his tail wagging. He looked happy for the first time in days. I followed, slower, scanning every inch of the yard. There was an iron fence enclosing it, tall and narrow, with enough space between the bars for Buster to squeeze through. That's when I saw the tree. It grew too close to the fence, branches twisting up and through the iron bars. It wasn't much of an escape route, but it was the only one I had. Buster slipped through easily and waited for me on the other side, tail wagging impatiently. I climbed the tree, clumsy and out of shape, my hand slipping on the rough bark. I could feel how weak I'd gotten from weeks of bad sleep and skipped meals. Halfway over, my arms trembled, but I managed to pull myself through and drop down on the other side. I was just catching my breath when Buster suddenly stiffened, gave a single low growl, and then bolted toward a hill behind the property. "Buster!" I shouted, chasing after him. He disappeared over the crest. The hill was steeper than it looked, forcing me to grab at roots and stones to keep from sliding. Someone, at some point, had embedded flat stone bricks into the slope, forming a makeshift staircase. I kept my eyes down, concentrating on each careful step, until my hand reached up and touched something soft. Carpet. I froze, then looked up, and my stomach turned cold. I wasn't outside anymore. I was standing halfway up the staircase that led to the second-floor landing. Above me, I could see the railing, the hallway, the same damn house. And Buster was gone again. I dragged myself the rest of the way up, too tired to fight it anymore, and sat on the landing calling his name. My voice echoed through the empty house. No response. Then the phone rang. I nearly fell down the stairs racing to answer it. My hands were shaking so badly that the receiver slipped once before I managed to grip it. Hello? Hey, sweetheart. My wife's voice filled the kitchen, warm, familiar, grounding. I've been worried. You haven't called in a while. I swallowed hard. I know, I'm sorry. Things have been weird. What's wrong? She hesitated. Your work called me. They said they haven't heard from you in a week. I blinked, confused. That's not right. I talked to them. I told you. They gave me a week off to rest. Remember? What? Her voice softened. Honey, I thought you were supposed to keep working as soon as you got there. I frowned, trying to piece it together. Yeah, but wait, how long have I even been here? There was a pause. Almost 9 days. The room tilted. Listen, you need to call the cops. Something's wrong here. I think I'm having some kind of medical emergency. The words came out as an excuse at first, something to make her take it seriously. But even as I said them, they started to feel true. Maybe it was a gas leak, maybe a tumor. Anything was better than the idea that this house was alive and playing with me. Baby, what's wrong? Are you okay? I thought I saw a shadow flicker across the living room wall. My throat went dry. Yeah, I'm okay. But no, I'm not. I need help. There's something wrong with this house. You're not making any sense. Just listen, I begged. Call the police. Tell them my uncle's name. Tell them to come here and that I might need an ambulance. Please, just help me. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, in the same soft, familiar tone, my wife said, Please, help you. Pretty, please. With a cherry on top? I stared down at the phone in my hand as my wife's voice kept talking through it. It sounded like her, but wrong. Mocking, sing-songy, like someone imitating her voice for fun. Does your tummy hurt? She teased. When's the last time you ate? I wonder what Buster tastes like. That last part made my stomach twist. I slammed the phone down, but it was right. My stomach did hurt. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten anything. As if on cue, I heard Buster whining upstairs. I pushed myself off the wall and started toward the staircase, only then realizing how bruised and sore my legs were from when I'd fallen earlier. Every step hurt, but I forced myself to keep going. Buster was lying in front of the bathroom again, his ribs visible through his thinning coat. He looked so weak, I could barely recognize him. The walls around him were covered in fresh words, losing your mind, written over and over, even smeared across the ceiling and floor. This time, I knew it wasn't rust or a paint. It was blood. It glistened wet in the hallway light. I bent down to lift Buster just as a heavy pounding started at the front door. I would have jumped out of my skin if he hadn't been in my arms. Then a man's voice called out, identifying himself as the police. Relief washed over me. I even recognized him, one of the same officers who'd been here before. Why couldn't I remember his name? I'm upstairs, I shouted, trying to keep my voice steady. But when I turned toward the staircase, the hallway stretched out in front of me, longer and longer, like the walls were being pulled by invisible hands. My arms ached from holding Buster. He felt heavier than ever, his limp body dragging me down. I knew it was the house messing with me again, trying to keep me from reaching help. But I clung to one thought. If the police were really here, then my wife must have come through. She must have called them. I kept moving, shuffling down the endless hallway, yelling for help. Then, over the officer's voice, I heard her. "I'm sorry," my wife said from downstairs. "My husband wasn't feeling well. He's resting in the bedroom. Can I help you?" I froze. "No," I screamed. "I'm here. I'm upstairs. Don't listen to her." The officer's voice sounded hesitant. "Ma'am, I'd still like to check up on him, if you don't mind." "Of course," she said sweetly. "He's right through here." I screamed until my throat burned, but it didn't matter. My voice didn't carry, like the walls were swallowing the sound whole. Sweat poured down my face as I tried to run, but no matter how fast I moved, the hallway kept stretching away from me. Then came a sound that stopped me cold. A man's scream. It tore up through the floorboards, raw and real, echoing through the house. The hallway snapped back to normal all at once, throwing off my balance. I found myself standing at the top of the staircase, too close to the edge, and I fell. I crashed down the stairs, landing hard on top of Buster. He yelped in pain, but he was alive. I reached for him, only to notice a trail of blood snaking from the hallway, curling around the corner and disappearing under my bedroom door. Something was still moving in there. A shadow stretched out from the crack beneath the door, shifting and twitching like it was alive. My hands were shaking as I crawled to the kitchen, grabbed my trusty frying pan, and crept back to the bedroom. The house was silent except for my own breathing. The shadow still moved under the door. Whatever was in there had killed someone. I could feel it. But if it could kill, that meant it could bleed too. I raised the pan and started to turn the doorknob. Before I could, the door flew open. Something turned toward me. I swung. The impact never came. Instead, I found myself staring into the face of the police officer, his eyes wide, his mouth twisted into an unnatural grin. Then I looked down. A knife was buried deep in his chest. My hand was still wrapped around the handle. He staggered, the smile still frozen in place, and collapsed beside me. I stumbled backward and dropped to the floor, the blade clattering against the tile. For a second, everything went silent. I looked down at my hands, trembling. I could swear I'd grabbed the frying pan. I remembered its weight, its cool metal handle. But when I tried to picture the kitchen, I remembered something else. Walking past the drawers, pulling out a knife instead. Was I really losing my mind? When I blinked again, the knife was back in my hands. I screamed and dropped it, crawling away, my palms streaked with blood. Then I saw Buster lying nearby, still. I crawled to him, pressing my head against his side. He was warm, but not breathing. I stayed there for a long time. I don't know how long. Minutes, hours, maybe days. Eventually, I dragged myself to the couch in the living room. I sat there, staring at nothing until night fell. Then I slept. When I woke up, the house was quiet. No whispers, no movement, just silence. The bodies were still there, Buster and the cop. I knew I had to do something, but I couldn't make myself move. My stomach growled. The sound made me angry for some reason, like my own body was mocking me. Finally, I stood. The air felt thick, heavy, pressing down on me. I went out back and found a shovel in the old shed attached to the porch. The metal felt cold in my hands. Digging was harder than I expected. My arms were weak, my breath coming in shallow bursts. I told myself I'd bury Buster first, then deal with the officer afterward. I picked Buster up gently and carried him outside. His fur was still warm against my skin, so soft it made my throat tighten. It didn't feel real, none of it did. He looked like he could wake up any second, but his brown eyes were glassy now, staring at nothing. I laid him in the hole and started to shovel the dirt back in. The sound of it hitting his fur made me sick. Still, I kept going. Some time later, I found myself wandering into the kitchen. The house was silent, except for the soft shuffle of my feet and the clatter of me rummaging through the pantry. Whenever I stopped moving, the quiet pressed in, thick, absolute. I wondered if the ghosts, or whatever they were, had finally gotten what they wanted. Maybe their goal all along had been to turn me into a killer. Now that they had, maybe they'd leave me alone for a while. That would be nice, because I was starving. I tore open a box of cereal and scooped a handful toward my mouth before freezing mid-motion. How could I be sure this was really cereal? What if it wasn't? What if it was something else? Rat poison, or broken glass, or something the house had disguised. What if it turned into worms the second it hit my tongue? The thought made me gag. I threw the box to the floor and backed away, suddenly sick to my stomach. My hunger vanished in an instant. I had to get out. That was the only thought left in my head, and that's when I saw it. The front door, wide open. For a moment, my heart soared. I even took a step toward it, my hand outstretched, but I stopped just short of touching it. It had to be another trick. I could already imagine it slamming shut the moment I reached for it, maybe taking a few fingers with it. A cool breeze drifted through the doorway. Real or not, it was freedom. I stood there trembling, caught between terror and desperation. Finally, I moved. Step by step, I crossed the threshold. Outside, the world looked normal, too normal. A police cruiser sat in my driveway, lights off. The driver's side door was open, keys hanging from the ignition. I scanned the street, empty. No neighbors, no birds, no sound at all. Maybe, I thought, the officer who died had been hiding something. Maybe he was part of whatever curse lived in that house. Maybe his death had broken it. I couldn't think of a better explanation for the sudden stroke of luck. So I shoved the fear down and climbed into the car. The engine started without issue. I backed out and drove off. For the first time in what felt like forever, sunlight hit my face. I rolled the window down and breathed it in. It felt good, free, real. Left turn, right turn, left, right. No idea where I was going, but it didn't matter. Until I realized I hadn't seen another car in a long time. No headlights, no taillights, no people. Where was everyone? Where was I? That heavy sinking feeling came back, not just in my stomach, but everywhere, pulling me down into myself. I blinked, and the steering wheel in my hands wasn't a steering wheel anymore. It was the armrest of a chair. I was sitting in the living room again, in the same damn armchair, my hands frozen in midair like I was still driving. A sound tore out of me, half a scream, half a sob. I stood up and screamed until my throat burned. How long had I been sitting there like that, grinning like an idiot, pretending to drive? When I turned, my laptop was glowing from the dining room table. I stumbled toward it. Something was already typed onto the screen. Lost your mind? Good. Now you won't mind losing the rest. My right hand felt heavy. I lifted it and saw a kitchen knife in my grip. I dropped it instantly, the clatter echoing through the house. My pulse was roaring in my ears. I sat down and started typing, desperate to overwrite whatever message had appeared. I didn't even look at the screen. I just focused on the keys, typing out a plea for help for anyone who might see it. But no matter what I tried to write, the words that appeared weren't mine. I'm sorry. I've disappointed you all for the last time. Goodbye. I wanted to scream again, but something had changed. I wasn't in the dining room anymore. I was sitting in the study. My fingers were still moving, typing faster than I could think. Words spilling out of me that didn't feel like mine, but sounded like me all the same. I wrote that I'd been sending messages, begging for help, emails to the police, posts to the town's Facebook page, anything I could do to prove I was still here, still real. I kept writing because stopping meant the house could catch up. Whenever I tried to take a break, I'd find myself somewhere new, a different room, a new nightmare. Once, I opened the study door and saw a landscape of fire outside, an endless pit of lava bubbling under a red sky. I slammed it shut before I could see if it was real. I don't even know if any of this is because of ghosts anymore. The truth is, I don't know anything. The more I think, the less I remember. I can't even recall my uncle's name now, or what he looked like. I'm not sure I ever had an uncle. How did I get here? Did I drive? Fly? Was there ever a trip? I can't remember my realtor's name, or even what they looked like. I can't remember my wife's name. My daughter's. Am I even a father? Am I even a person? I keep telling myself I must be, because I'm sitting here writing this in the study. But the harder I think, the less I can hold on to. My parents, my childhood, my friends, all of it's gone. All I have left are these words, and even those are starting to slip away. Now, I only remember this house, these walls, these rooms, and all the nightmares I've lived through inside it. Both the ones I saw with my eyes open and the ones that found me when I tried to sleep. It feels like I'm back in that cop car again. I can see a way forward, but I don't know where it leads, or what I'm supposed to do when I get there. This isn't living anymore. I'm so tired, and I'm so hungry. It's getting harder to think. The voices are louder now. Too many, all talking over each other. I can't make out what they're saying, but I know they're getting closer. I know if I stop writing, I won't last long. But my hands are trembling. My fingers ache. I'm running out of things to say. I'm tired. So tired. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dogs. I have to keep writing. If I stop, I'll disappear. But I don't even know what to say anymore. What's my name? I don't know. I'll die if I stop writing. I'll die if I stop working. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dogs. Dogs, dogs. Buster. I miss Buster. I wish I could pet him just one more time. But was he ever real? Was any of this? I'm so tired, so hungry. I need to focus. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy goodbye. I'm quick. I've jumped. The all. Last time. Lazy dogs. I'm sorry. Jumped over. Disappointed you, lazy. For the lazy dogs. Goodbye. I'm sorry. I've disappointed you all for the last time. Goodbye.